Hi, I'm Nicole from See Nicole Read, and I am here with Laura from Laura's Library Card. And we are together today to discuss a Thanksgiving mystery called The Diva Runs Out of Time by Krista Davis. And we picked this book because the Thanksgiving season is quickly approaching, and we deviated a little bit from our typical romance, a little bit of steamy romance that we usually do, and we went for a mystery this time around. So in The Diva Runs Out of Time, we follow Sophie. She is about to welcome her parents, her sister, and her sister's fiance, who she has not met, to her house for the Thanksgiving week and weekend. And we start off, she goes grocery shopping and a man is murdered in the parking lot. And she's the one to discover the body and calls 911, and immediately she becomes a suspect. The rest of the book, we are introduced with a whole bunch of new characters, her parents, and there's more crime and more mystery. And there's a hot police officer that gets involved, and we are along for the ride trying to solve the mystery along with Sophie.
So other than the Thanksgiving theme, did you go into this book thinking that it was going to be like a romantic suspense, or you knew it was a cozy mystery? Or
I was not anticipating romance.
Okay.
Which we really didn't get much romance. No, it was very little. I was really thinking it was going to be sort of like a comical, cozy mystery.
And you did not laugh at all?
There was times that I certainly laughed at how ridiculous it was.
Well, when you suggested this, I was actually sort of excited for a Thanksgiving theme. I can't think of another book off the top of my head that is Thanksgiving themed. So I was kind of all right, let's try this. And
I don't think I've ever read another Thanksgiving theme book.
Yeah.
Not
that I can think of off the top of my head. And I figured just by the description that it was going to be a cozy mystery kind of book. So I was not really surprised by any of it. But one thing that did sort of surprise me is this is listed as the first book in a series, a Diva Cooks mystery series or something.
There's 13 of them now or something.
Oh my goodness. This was published in 2008. And it definitely felt older than that to me. I mean,
yes. Yeah.
And also it did not feel like the first in a series. It felt like this should have been book 4 in a series.
We already knew the character. I felt like we were supposed to already know them.
Well, that's what I mean. Is the main character Sophie is 44, and she is divorced, and it seems like it's not been that long since she's gotten divorced. But we never hear about the history of this divorce. We hear almost nothing about the history with the sort of kind of rival character Natasha. And then all the whole slew of characters are sort of introduced so quickly, and with only sort of one major characteristic that each one of them has, that it almost felt like you were returning to characters
to already well-established characters.
Right. Yeah. I actually looked up halfway through. I was is this book 1? Is this a spin-off of another major series, and therefore the characters are familiar? But not that I could find. All I could find was that it was the first in this universe.
You said a couple things that I want to ask you about. You said she was mid-40s, our main character, Sophie. Did you feel throughout the book, continuously, that she was much younger than that?
I don't know about much younger, but yeah, I would have put her at least at 35 or maybe even 30, I guess. I don't know. It was...
See, in my head, I kept thinking of her as 25. Despite the divorce and owning this big house and sort of owning her own business, in my head, she was 25 because it was her response to things. I was constantly that's not how I would respond to something, let alone someone older than me would respond to something. Yeah.
What was kind of part of the reason why I looked up this book and saw that it was in 2008 publishing date was because in a lot of ways, this is like set in a contemporary time setting. There's cell phones, there's the internet, like there's digital photos that you can just print at home. So I think it's supposed to be set close to 2008. But it definitely read to me as like older than that. And I don't know if that was just because of like the age of the characters or what, but like there were just a number of references that I was kind of like when like at a later part there's a call girl, or everyone calls her a tart. Yeah. I'm just like, who would call this person a tart? And I was like, okay. But then like also Sophie has like lace handkerchiefs laying around, and like that she like puts in a bowl to put like rolls in and stuff. And I'm like, if someone showed up to my house and was like, I baked these beautiful homemade rolls, please serve these, I'd be like,
well, what'd you bring them in?
Yeah, I just like put the Tupperware on the middle of the table. I wouldn't like go and get the fancy basket and like lay my doily in it. Like I don't have any of that stuff. And she had
you got to clean up later.
Well, right. And then like at one other point, she was like, she had a silver tray that she carried like coffee with creamer and a sugar bowl and all that. And like, this is like a Virginia home or something. It's not like England. Or right. I was like, that's kind of weird. And then like at a different point, she's like, well, since we're all awake, let's have some nightcaps. And so she went, and like these people were drinking sherry. So she had sherry glasses for them. But the men were drinking scotch. So she went and got the like scotch tumblers for them. And I was just like,
and her selection of alcohol, like,
yeah.
So where she described that she lived outside of DC, that's a very like expensive,
yes,
upper middle class neighborhood to live in. And she ran like it wasn't exactly like a catering business, but it was
a
like,
party planner.
Yeah, like the party organizer. And I was like, how does she have? And she was divorced. I mean, it didn't sound like.
And she'd had to pay out
divorce. So what other kind of payout was she getting? I was like, where does she have? This is like my question in everything I read. Where do they get all their money? How do they have this much money? How is she affording all of this?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was sort of clear that she came from a well-to-do family.
Her parents felt to me like very traditional Southernists. Like that's how I felt.
Like waspish.
Yes.
Oh, I was getting like, yeah, like this waspish.
Oh no, I meant like Southern, like tradition. You take really good care of your guests.
That's true.
Everything's super tidy. And you are the ultimate hostess, on your feet every minute somebody is in your house.
Yeah, I got that vibe. Yeah. And to me, I think that's a little bit of a Southern thing, and it's a little bit of a generational thing, because like I've been to your house and you've been to my house, and yes, like the person who's hosting prepares the meals, but like I don't just sit on the couch and say, oh, another sherry please, while you cook your meals. Like I'm up there and helping, and I think it's sort of a generational thing to be a lot less formal about it.
That really got under my skin in this book, that she was constantly like waiting on everybody hand and foot, and they all just were like letting her. Yeah, like they would come in and be like, oh, I'll help you carry this to the table or something, but she did everything, and like constantly, and like mass chaos would be going on, and her mom would be like, you better get the police officers something to eat. I'd be like, right, there's like a dead guy. They're not here to eat. Like
yeah, that was kind of annoying as well. It didn't really, I was easily able to dismiss that, because it just was like part of the like, okay, part of the book for me. One thing, so this sort of brings us to the food themes in this book. What did you think about the food themes and how food was described, and the role that I mean, we can get to like the role that the stuffing competition and stuff, that part too, but like throughout this whole book, Sophie, it might be a party planner, but she definitely also likes to cook and prepares,
like practically gourmet cook.
Yeah, every time it was ever said that she was preparing anything, she was like, I grabbed the organic cheese puffs that I happen to have on hand. Yeah. And like, I grabbed the grass-fed blah, blah, blah pork chops that just looked amazing. And I was just like, okay. I'd be like, welcome to my house. Here's some Doritos.
I liked your little like transatlantic voice there. Your organic cheese bobs, my grass-fed whatever.
Grass-fed beef.
I actually enjoyed that. I really like food.
Yeah.
And I really miss eating out during the pandemic. Not that I went to any places that made food, anything like Sophie, but
yeah.
I like food and I wish I could cook better. So I actually really enjoyed that. And at the end of the book, there was like several recipes for things that she prepared in the book. So I think the author was maybe first and foremost like a foodie.
A foodie.
Yeah. So I can
listened to
understand,
the
like,
audio
if you're
book,
not
so.
a foodie, all that description in the book might be like over the top.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed it actually. And I remember reading a book very not similar to this in any way other than it was a cozy mystery. And that it was like sort of centered around food. This was years and years and years ago. And at the start of every chapter, there was a recipe. And then like that dish would show up in that chapter, whether it was like something that someone brought over or something that she like remembered eating, or whether it was something she prepared, like that recipe. And I remember like when I was reading that book, this was years ago, like I was like looking through some of the recipes, and I think I was barely out of college, and I was looking at these and I was like, who has the time and effort and energy to like put these 6 hours into this recipe? They were very complicated recipes. It was not like trim, bake, serve, you know?
And very expensive and complex for someone to take on right out of college, I'm sure.
Well, for sure. And it was like, I have 3 spices, salt, pepper, and more pepper. Like, is flour a spice? And so it was just like, when it was like, add a little hint of saffron, and I'm like, saffron?
Can that be substituted for salt?
Yeah. Or I'd be like, I have this Italian seasoning packet that came on my last pizza. Can that count? So yeah, like I enjoyed the food descriptions in this book. I do think it was kind of funny that like at every turn, Sophie was like, oh, it's time for brunch. I just opened my fridge, found something, and just threw it in the oven for a quick and easy thing. And the other part of it was that she kept doing that with like the decor in her house too. Like Sophie was writing a column, and the other character who was sort of her domestic rival, Natasha, also had a local column and a like TV show. And Natasha was like a Martha Stewart wannabe, and all of her suggestions were like either really time consuming, really difficult, or like dangerous or like impractical. And like then
all of her advice came off as like super snobby.
Oh yeah.
Like if she would give me that advice, I'd be like, not today. Or no.
And I think that was sort of done on purpose by the author. I think that you were supposed to, especially early in the book, Sophie is frustrated with Natasha and how everyone seems to love Natasha. And like Natasha is a somewhat celebrity locally because she has this local TV station. And so
and I think we need to say here that Natasha is now
dating
Sophie's ex Mars.
Right.
Which I had to look it up. They said he had started housekeeping or something with her. They put it some way I'd never heard of before. I actually had to like look up. I'm like, does that mean what I think it means? Like,
well, people throughout the book, like Sophie's mother and Sophie's sister, like multiple family members are like, oh, well, since Natasha stole Mars from you, and over and over and over, Sophie's like, oh, she didn't steal him from me. Like it was mutual. But like we never actually heard the story really about like why they divorced or split up.
And we like, kind of feel like Natasha is conniving enough that she could have like worked her way in there and stolen him away.
Yeah. But throughout this
I have
book,
my qualms. Can you steal someone away who doesn't want to be stolen? I don't know. Like
that's true. But like
don't even know what happened. Let's not go there.
That's true. Very good points. But Natasha there are little like snippets, like little blurbs or whatever at the top of every chapter that are frequently like dear Abby kind of things, like, and they're written as Dear Natasha or Dear Sophie. And all of the Natasha ones are like, you always seem so put together. When people stop by my house, I'm always got my hair in curlers or my bathrobe on. Like, what do I do? And like Natasha's like, well, you should put your makeup on the second you get up and keep a hairbrush and lipstick in your foyer so that anyone drops by and it's easy to freshen yourself. And everyone, and I'm just like, oh. And it's like, that's the point, is that every time Natasha gives advice, it's complicated or stupid or
very
like
inconvenient.
Yeah, it's condescending. You know, one of the other columns was someone who's like, every time the guys come over for football, you know, game day with my husband, the den is just a mess and I dread them coming because it's like a mess and I have to clean up after them. What do I do? And Natasha's answer is like, put out your hors d'oeuvres on your crystal. The men will super appreciate it and treat your place well. A great hostess always makes a, you know, lasting impression. And it was like,
another thing was like, only serve them beer in the kitchen or something.
Yeah, pour the steins yourself.
Right.
I was like, so like her advice was very like, wait on them hand and foot and ignore any mess they make because you're trying to be a good hostess here.
Right.
And then all of like Sophie's advice was like practical stuff and very like down to earth, and was like, well, you want an easy centerpiece, just like put some candles in a nice like amber colored glass and that could be used for Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Yeah.
And so it was like, you were definitely supposed to relate to Sophie as a practical, like down to earth, more like realistic and money conscious and like, you know, good person kind of vibe.
Absolutely. It was definitely, they were definitely supposed to like extremely contrast each other.
Right. But I thought it was kind of interesting that it was like every time Sophie was like, wow, that was a really tough morning. I hurried home to make brunch. I grabbed the premium cut or grass-fed pork tenderloin and just threw it in a pan with some cloves and some apples and some this and some that. And then I draped some nuts along the trim of my, you know, centerpiece or whatever. And it was like, and everyone's like, oh, Sophie, this looks so great. And I'm just like, who puts like different centerpieces for different meals, but like for the same people in the same 48 hours?
And I want to know who, like the day after Thanksgiving, isn't like everybody just gets cold leftovers.
Yeah.
Or she has like pizza or something.
Yeah. Now I will say I like her idea. She says at one point she keeps like frozen cookie dough ready to go in the freezer, and then that way she can just like grab some and then like bake like fresh cookies anytime anyone comes over. I was like, that's pretty smart. But then my problem would be that I would like eat half that cookie dough.
Right? There would be nothing left by the time you have guests. Same here.
So yeah. One thing, so ultimately this is a cozy mystery. It is a big cast of characters.
Yes.
What did you think about how many characters there were and how they were drawn, and what did you think of the character element?
You actually said something earlier that we like really only knew one characteristic about the characters. I felt like the like supporting characters were very one-dimensional.
Yeah.
The mom, Sophie's mother, was very like opinionated and overbearing mom, which I see in like so many books. Like,
yeah.
Just, and like not even super concerned for her daughter's like mental health after her mom doesn't even realize that there was a first body.
Yeah.
But she knows about that her daughter found the second body, and she's not like really super concerned with that. She's like, let's go home. Right. And you have to give us the perfect Thanksgiving. It has to be Natasha style Thanksgiving.
Well, and when it's eventually brought up, it's like, it's concern not over Sophie's like mental health, like, oh, are you traumatized after finding this body? It's more like, oh, how inconvenient that like this detective keeps showing up because there's that whole like body problem. And then she's like, oh, the detective's hot. Like, I'm going to try to push him on my daughter.
Right. I don't know. Sophie's mother just absolutely drove me nuts.
Yeah.
And her dad was kinder, but he sort of just like went right along with his wife. Like, oh, yeah, like, bring me my nightcap. Yeah. Like, the sister was annoying, like very self-absorbed
until the end, when suddenly it's just like, well, I've been doing
she had
it
like one
way.
redeeming scene. You're right. Yeah.
Well, and so
they felt very like unsisterly. Like she said that like their brother wasn't in the book at all, but they mentioned him that he couldn't come
Yeah.
for Thanksgiving. And it
Right.
sounded like Sophie had a better relationship with him than with the sister.
Sophie just like viewed, what was her name? Hannah, her sister.
Yeah.
She was like frustrated because Hannah is somewhat recently engaged, and the whole time of her visit was just like all wedding talk. And so Sophie was like, why is Hannah talking about the wedding left, right, and center? This is like excessive. And also Hannah seems to be wearing different clothes and acting slightly differently to known behavior. And so therefore Sophie's thinking, why is Hannah keep changing herself for this new fiance?
Who we're not really like that fond of. Sophie's not, we don't get like the warm fuzzy feeling off of him.
Right.
That like we don't really see what Hannah sees in him.
Right. His one trait is he's sneaky.
Right. Which I felt like there was gonna be a bigger reveal about that. Like about how
I agree. I thought his like later
2.
What?
Maybe book 2.
Oh yeah, maybe book 2. I don't know. Yeah. So one thing that I've been sort of okay. Sorry. I agree with you that most of the characters basically are relatively one-dimensional. One something that was frustrating to me was that we had so many characters that were just like all felt like they could come and go. Like she had multiple like family members who just like, you know, she invited neighbors, and then she was like invited random guy who was walking on the street who was her like neighbor, but you know, like they just came and went. And like one of her house guests was a friend of her and her ex, and then like he kind of just came and went. He like people just came and went, and she was just like at another place to the table. Okay. Like she planned the Thanksgiving dinner for 6.
And then they ended like 14.
Yeah, and ultimately had 14. And she was like, well, thank goodness I bought that 25-pound turkey. And I'm like, my stress level would have just like skyrocketed if suddenly it was like person after person after person.
And it was like people that most people, when they have a divorce, I would think,
yeah,
sort of like don't have too much to do with their husband or their ex-husband or their family anymore. Right. But like her former mother-in-law came, her former brother and sister-in-law came,
yep.
Her ex-husband and
his new girlfriend,
there, right? And their friend from England, who you were mentioning earlier, they all end up there, and 3 neighbors, and the police officer is just like, oh my gosh, yeah. I know what you mean. If there was a lot I'd be like, well, somebody's gonna have to sit on the couch and eat.
Right. And so yeah, I liked that there were so many characters, because I think if there'd only been a couple, if it had been more realistic and there was only a few characters, we would then the like potential cast of characters from which Sophie could choose. You know, Sophie's suspicious. Like everyone who has included in the Thanksgiving like dinner kind of he has a motive but no opportunity. She has opportunity but no motive. You know, he has motive but like he doesn't know both bodies. You know, the whole book, Sophie is trying to figure out who done it. And so to some extent, like I liked that there was a good cast of characters to choose from. And I liked that throughout the book we kept learning a little tidbit about this one and learning a tidbit about this one. And so Sophie, like as soon as she learns something about that person, she's like, oh, I think it's that guy. I mean, like yeah. And then she's like, well, this doesn't add up and this doesn't add up. And then she finds out this tidbit and she's like, well, I think it's that person. So I enjoyed that flow, but like at some point I sent Nicole this picture of me just being like, because they had kind of turned into these like junior detectives. She and her best friend like were wearing all black and like we're sneaking around the houses at night, even though there's like supposedly a killer on the loose and a peeping Tom
and they think someone's stalking Natasha. Yeah,
right.
Like, there's some like shady people out there, and they're just like, come on, let's go.
Right,
come on, like, Shaggy. Like,
yeah, it was very like there was no tension or concern for their safety.
Yeah, there was no like, we could be next. If we're not careful, we could be next.
Yeah. So I think for the most part we've been pretty non-spoilery.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to just like talk about the ending and kind of give a little spoiler warning now and then discuss the ending before we kind of finish up with our final thoughts?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, so spoiler starting now,
Now,
and
so
we'll put a time up for to jump to skip to our like kind of wrap up if you want to skip the actual like spoiler of like who done it part.
that sounds good.
So we'll put that up on the screen.
So let me ask you this now. Did you were you able to have sort of any inclination before we found out who done it? Did you have a thought? Did you have a suspect in mind?
Well, throughout the book, I sort of like Sophie, kind of jumped from person to person who I thought could be our person, our killer.
Mm-hmm.
Because there seemed to be no connection between the two murder victims, like because Sophie never quite figured that out, I realized about halfway through, I was like, I think it's going to be two people. Like, I think that there's going to be two killers. Not that they wouldn't necessarily be working together, but I thought that there was going to be two responsible parties.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, and I did suspect, spoilers officially right now, I did suspect Clyde for killing Simon because he was like Simon's bodyguard or driver or whatever.
See, I was like suspicious of Clyde, but I thought that it was going to be that Clyde and Simon were a couple, like on the Diva.
Oh.
That's what I was suspicious of because there was something he said in the hotel when Sophie and Nina or Sophie and somebody run into him in the hallway in the hotel after the murder.
He says he's really sad about Simon. He was the best employer. He got to travel first
Right.
class
And
with
we
him.
lived together in England or something he said. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, like that's a little, like I was a little suspicious.
Okay.
But I did not, like he was not my number one suspect for the murder, no.
No, I thought that Natasha was having an affair with Simon.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
So
I went back and forth on Natasha. I was like, it's too obvious that it's her. And then I was like,
yeah.
But like, are we supposed to think that? And it really is her. Like I went back and forth, but in the end I was like, I don't think it was Natasha. And I didn't suspect Mars ever.
Okay. I didn't really suspect Mars ever either. And I never really officially suspected Natasha. I thought she might know something, but I never suspected her of being the actual killer.
Mm-hmm.
I thought she was going to be more involved, and in a way she was, because she was the one who hired the PI, and the killers thought that she knew more than she did, so she was a target. I don't know. What do you think about the final reveal?
Well, first I had narrowed down my suspect. I really thought it was going to be Humphrey because
I thought Humphrey was too stupid.
I didn't like Humphrey. I felt like he wouldn't go away.
Yeah.
At one point when they thought the colonel had died because they saw him leave in the hearse or something.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, when they find out he's not dead, he was like, well, Humphrey was just happened to be driving by. I was like, at 2 a.m. Okay.
Driving his hearse?
And took me in his hearse. And I was like, And there was like other things. And I was like, that Humphrey, there's something. So that's who I suspected. Just mostly because he gave me the heebie-jeebies. Like I really thought it was going to be him.
He was definitely a creeper. And yes. Sophie needed to not be so patient and polite with that guy. She needed to just be like, sorry, my mom called you. Ain't happening, bub. And instead she was just like, bye. And I was like, no, you need to
call me, I'll call you.
That's right.
Yeah.
But no, I thought it was weird that Humphrey happened to be driving by in the hearse. I thought that was suspicious, but like I was like, that's just creepy. I thought it was going to be Craig for a while, the fiance, partly because Sophie in particular is so suspicious of him, right. And he keeps sneaking around and such. And she's like, but Craig doesn't live anywhere near here. Like what would he have to do with what motive would he have?
These people, right.
And I kept thinking, well, he isn't who he says he is. Like he's not he's not really a doctor from this other place or whatever. Like he has a beef here and does know these people who have been murdered, and it was him. You know what I mean? I thought that was going to be like a bigger plot,
right?
Revealed.
Well, maybe that's like another book, like 2 or 3, like where they're like, here's his real It's not
story.
really a doctor. Yeah. So, what did I think of the big reveal? I thought that went very quickly. Yeah. Like, it was like she overheard them fessing up to each other. I mean, like they knew, but like discussing the details of it, and she overheard it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it? That's how we're gonna like.
Yeah.
I almost felt like we spent all this time and then we get like the reveal and it's over. Which, I mean, after you have the reveal, you know who done it. Yeah. How much more story is there to tell? But I was like, oh, that was very quick. Like very, very little reward, very quick.
Yeah.
Is how I felt.
I would agree with that. I thought that the actual scene was kind of, I don't want to say anticlimactic. It was like the most tense scene of the book because Sophie has kind of arranged it so that all of her suspects are all going out to dinner except for her. And so she's like alone in her house. She sneaks back into her own house. She has her best friend set up across the street, keeping an eye on the house, and they're communicating by cell phone. She's communicating with her sister at the restaurant and communicating with her best friend across the street. And it's like, who's missing from the restaurant and who's sneaking into the house? And then like, ultimately there's like 3 people sneaking into the house because there's actually 4 people and 5 if you count Sophie, because like one, like, yeah, it started to get kind of like crazy at that point. And the fact that she's like sneaking around her own house, but she's managing to like step on squeaky floorboards and like open stiff drawers. And I'm just like, this is your own house. Like, why are you not better prepared for this? Right. And then she actually says, despite multiple times in the book saying that there is a den that is attached to the living room, and I thought she should be hiding in the den on like, you know, listening through the crack in the door, but no, she's actually in the living room. And then that, like, when the people sneak in, they're also in the living room. So she's just like, please don't shine the flashlight on me or else they'll find me. And I'm just like, this is so stupid. And like, there's a gunshot. Like I was like, you, like, what the hell? But she's not real. She's like, I was terrified. And I was like, I'm just laughing. I'm not terrified for you. And then like the villains start monologuing, like the one villain's like, I can't believe I have to deal with you. You're so dumb. This is all of our plan, A, B, C. And I did this and you did this and it should have gone well, but then you messed up and did this. And then I messed up and here's my grocery list of what we did. Right. And it was like,
did you ever, you've seen The Incredibles?
Yes.
Where he's like, oh, you caught me monologuing. It was like, yes. It was too
yes.
easy.
So yeah, ultimately, I was glad that we got all the answers.
Right.
But I felt like the way that actually was, all that information was actually presented was like a little lackluster.
I agree.
And ultimately, I hadn't really predicted who done it.
I had not.
So on the one hand, that's good because like, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it if at like 50% I'd have been like, it was her. And then the rest of the book, it was like, that was her. It was her. It was her. It was her. And then at the end, they're like, it was her. And I'd be like, I know. That would have not been good.
Be like, I want to like play detective. I want there to be like a chain of evidence that like not everybody sees, but like if you're like really looking for it and following it, that you'll figure it out. Yeah. And even looking back, I don't feel like you could have done that in this book. It could have been anybody. Like,
I think that,
I didn't know.
I think you're right. I think the best mysteries or detective stories leave enough clues so that if you were to like reread the book or rewatch the movie, the things that you would spot early on, knowing who done it, are like giant red flags. And you're like, I can't believe I missed that.
Right.
And I want to be able to figure things out like 2 minutes before it's revealed. Like I want to be on, like I want to be trying to figure it out. It's a lot of suspense, and then it's like, oh my god, I think it was this person, and then they're like, it was this person. Like that's how I
like,
that's how I want
it.
like, yeah, like I figured it out 2 minutes ago, but I figured it out. I feel like it's really hard. I think it's hard to write. It must be hard to write a good mystery because you want to leave, you have to leave enough clues that like the super sleuths could probably figure it out.
Right.
But you don't want it to be too obvious. So
there's a very delicate balance.
Yes. And I feel that in this book, there was one or two hints, but
there was equal hints towards everybody.
Right. I like that there were so many people considered and so many like facets, because I really do think that like real life is difficult. Like if someone turns up murdered, and especially somebody like Simon, like that character was a traveler, a rich man, he had pissed off a lot of people, like, you know, that person really would have quite a number of people that he had upset and therefore could potentially have motive. You know, I think that that's sort of true to life in that real people are really complicated. But as
especially everybody has a history and a backstory that you don't know that's going
to
the light.
Right. And so on the one hand, I liked that Sophie was investigating and was able to come up with a little bit of you know, evidence or suspicions kind of for each character. But ultimately it turned out that like when you suspect every character, you don't know who to suspect.
Right.
And I think would have liked it a little bit better if the ultimate real whodunit had been on that list.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like either of the people that ultimately turned out to be the killers were like people that Sophie had really focused on.
Right. And should that have been our like red flag? Like, oh, she didn't suspect them. Who's the only people besides her parents that she didn't suspect?
Well, but if it had turned out to be Humphrey because he was just like maniacal and desperate to love her and thought that he had a shot, like, and he tried to sabotage the judge so that his love could win the you know, win the competition. And if he had killed the PI because he mistakenly thought the PI was like going after the woman he loved, like, wouldn't you have been like, I was right, it was Humphrey, I knew he was super sus?
But I would have felt like vindicated because he creeped me out. I would have been like, see, he was so slimy and creepy, lurky. Like, I don't know. This felt really like Scooby-Doo / Clue, like parody campy to me.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's some extent.
That's harsh.
Well, I don't know that that's harsh, but I think that's sort of a hallmark of the genre. I think I have not read that many cozy mysteries, but this felt Agatha Christie to me. It felt both Poirot and, oh God, who's the other one?
See, I never got into Agatha Christie.
I have not read a ton, but the like few that I have read, I read a whole collection of like Poirot mysteries. And to some extent they were like all very much the same. And then in other ways they were very, I never could figure it out though. Like they were very like, I don't want to say formulaic, but they were very thematically similar. And yet at the end I was always like, oh, huh, okay. So I never managed to figure it out, but I don't know. I think this was very like typical of a cozy mystery in that it was very short time period. This book takes place over 5 days. There's a lot of drama that's really not drama, but like your characters jump to conclusions to create wild accusations and red herrings left, right, and center. And there's a wide cast of characters and everybody takes a turn being the suspect. I feel like those are some real hallmarks of this genre.
I think that it's just not my genre.
So ultimately, what are your sort of final overall thoughts and rating?
I think I'm going to be like a little bit like introspective here. I think I learned a little bit about myself that I don't like a cozy mystery. That if I'm going to read a mystery, I want it to be maybe more like a thriller mystery. Like, there's like a really big bad guy out there and he killed these people, or he's a serial killer, or he's after people or whatever. And we got to like really solve the clues here. We got to buckle down and figure out who it is. People are in danger. Where that was sort of not what happens in a cozy mystery.
Yeah.
That they're like, oh, it was really bad, but we really got to keep on feeding all these people Thanksgiving dinner and the brunch the next day. And then like the next day and the next day, where I'd be like, I'm going to my room. I found a murdered man twice. Don't talk to me.
I need a bubble bath.
Don't talk to me till next year. Okay. After Christmas.
See you next Thanksgiving.
Yeah. And so I feel like in the end, I'm going to give this 2.5 stars just because
well, not every book is for every person.
It wasn't for me.
So I have not read a ton of cozy mysteries. I don't even read that many just like mysteries or thrillers. I would agree with you that to some extent I do prefer a little more tension, conflict, higher stakes. And therefore maybe more mystery thriller overall. But I kind of knew going in a little bit of what to expect. So I think I'm going to give this 3 stars. I thought it was perfectly fine for what it was. It's just not really my cup of tea. And ultimately I felt like I was a little disappointed in the final reveal. And I think the writing was like, okay. I think a little bit better of characterization and not having every single character, including Sophie, like jump to so many conclusions so quickly. So I think that like if we could have eliminated maybe 2 or 3 characters and taken those characters' times to more fully round out the rest, I would have like that a little bit better. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with 3 stars. Would you?
I wanted to say that I wrote it down here. It was almost 4 stars on Goodreads. It was 3.95, which is really 4.
Right.
But there were a lot of people that kind of shared our sentiments. Like there was too many characters, or the reveal sort of fell flat for me, or I didn't really care about any of these people or what happened. But a lot of the people mentioned another series by Krista Davis. It was the Paws and Claws series that people seem to really like that, which I'm going to assume that was also a mystery.
Yeah, probably.
I probably should have looked a little bit more into it before I brought it up, but that so many people liked that series. So why did this one fall flat? I don't know.
I think I saw that as well, that it had pretty high ratings. 3.98 is, I think, good. I have sort of like a personal threshold most of the time of like a 3.8. If I look up a book that sounds kind of interesting and then it's like a 3.6, I'm like, not good enough. Sorry.
I've only got so much time.
That's right. There's only so much time and pages I can read in my life. I think that there are a whole set of people who don't like reading about any like gore or too explicit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Or too scary. And so their whole like but their preference is this sort of cozy mystery that has elements of mystery and you have to figure out the whodunit part, but that have very low stakes.
It's like very clean.
Yes, it's clean. It's low tension. It's somewhat formulaic, and I could see how that would be like comforting, and that's part of why it's called like a cozy mystery. And it was quick. It was quick to read. It was easy to read, and so because I was not on the edge of my seat, have to get through it. I was able to just like go right through. You know what I mean? Right. Like so I think that there are a whole section of people like that. And if those parameters were met, there was a whodunit, there was a whole cast of characters, it met my expectations, it was clean, like they're just going to rate it well. So I think that's part of why
it was rated the way
it was rated that high, I guess. And I also think that there's something to be said for like a theme. Like this series all has to do with like the diva, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. So I have a feeling there's a lot more
I think
cooking
and look up like what book 2 is about. I wonder, is it even follow Sophie or is it about somebody else entirely?
I don't know. Let's look real quick.
Let me look. Yeah.
The series is called A Domestic Diva Mystery Series, and it looks like Sophie is the main character sort of throughout this series. And the second book is called The Diva Takes the Cake, and it says some wedding advice from the domestic diva: keep the food, lose the groom. Oh, it's not great when there's already a typo in the first line of your blurb.
Ooh.
That might be a Goodreads thing. It might not be
that might not be any fault of Krista's.
Yeah. So then it looks like this says it's about Hannah and
you're supposed to read it. Keep
the food, lose the groom. So yeah, this says like, you know, an event, and it has to do with Sophie's sister and her impending marriage, and hidden family secrets begin to come to light.
Okay, so and that overall rating of book 2 is
3.97.
So very, very similar to the other one. Yeah.
But it only has half as many reviews, which I think is what tends to happen, is these big long series that have, you know, 13 books that follow the same person. I mean, okay, if I lived in a small town and I was a detective and the same woman in this town 14 times keeps finding bodies, I would be super suspicious of her.
Me too. You know? Well, then I even questioned, like, did she do it?
At one point,
we just don't know.
At one point, I considered that, but for only like a half a second, because
I didn't seriously consider it, but I wondered it.
Right. That's not the way of a cozy mystery, so I could rule it out. But, you know, that would be the way of like a much more of like a thriller book, where it was like, and then it turns out that she actually like has this split personality or like paranormal, whatever.
Right. That's like, what's it called with John Cusack, where you're looking for a murderer the whole time, and there's like all these different characters. And in the end, it turns out John Cusack's all the characters.
I don't know that movie.
Oh my gosh, it's really good. I love John Cusack, but I can't think. Hold on, let me see. John Cusack movie with multiple personalities. Identity. Oh. It's pretty good.
There was probably some viewer that was like screaming it the whole time.
It's Identity. Okay.
So yeah, I think overall we both thought it was like pretty good, pretty like decent book, but also not really our thing.
Right.
So it was a good experiment.
I would be interested to know if, like, as the series continues on, if she ends up with that Detective Wolf, like if they have a thing.
I think they will.
They think so?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of like cozy mysteries have this very light element of romance where it's like an on again, off again, you know, like
fluff.
It's very like there's no substance, and they don't ultimately ever end up getting together, or they will get together and they'll do a time jump, so they don't have to write the romance. It'll be on book like 6, and it'll be like, now that we were living together over the last 4 years,
Okay, so when we do this again next month in December, assuming we can squeeze it in amidst all the chaos, even though I don't have anything planned because we're not allowed to do anything.
Right.
It's your turn to pick. Are you going to keep with, like, we did Halloween, we did Thanksgiving? Are you going to pick something Christmassy as the underlying theme? Or are you over it?
No, I actually was thinking the other day that I should read some Christmas books. So I would be open to that. I have one chosen. I was thinking of trying to find like a Harlequin Christmas.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And it would be like it would be cheesy, it would be light, and it'd be romantic, and it'd be quick.
Yeah, no, that sounds great.
So if that sounds interesting to you, dear viewer, then tune back in probably close to Christmas time, and we will try to have another talk of I'm going to pick a Christmas something, and it'll probably be romance. So if that sounds great, and it won't be In the Holidays by Christina Lauren. So other than that one book, it'll be something else. Tune back in then. So
sounds good. That'll be over on your channel.
Yes, it's this is on Nicole's channel, so it'll be my turn to pick the Christmas book, and that will be over on my channel, Laura's Library Card. So
all right,
thanks for having me. I ultimately enjoyed choosing this cozy romance.
I always enjoy the talking it through with you part. That's what I like the best.
Yes, I would agree. Did I just call this a cozy romance?
Yeah, maybe. I knew what you meant.
We had a fun, I'm glad that it had like a Thanksgiving theme. And you're right. The best part about this is usually, I don't want to say bashing, but like.
We are kind of like hard. We're critical. I feel like I am critical.
I try to be a critical thinker. I try not to always I try to find at least something positive to say. But I think it's worthwhile to be thinking thoroughly about what you're reading, and I think that
finding what you like and what you don't like.
Well, right. And if you rate everything as 4 and 5 stars, then like how do you find a book that really like goes above and beyond? And so I think that if we are very consistently saying, well, this was a 2, this was a 3, when we say this was a 5, it's going to really be a standout book.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do you want to hear? I know I picked this book, but I couldn't remember what it was about.
Okay.
I read the descriptions of so many Thanksgiving books, which ironically, most of them were mysteries.
Okay.
I thought that I had picked the one that was about quilts. Do you remember? Did I send that one to you?
Oh.
There was like the quilting caper at Thanksgiving. So that's what I thought this was. I even told Matt, I was like, oh, I don't remember. It has something to do with quilts. There's like people come together at Thanksgiving and there's a quilt stolen and it's like $1,000.
So you kept thinking, you kept like waiting for the quilt to show up throughout this book.
Well, I realized by the time the second person got murdered, I was like, that's not this book. We didn't go with that one.
No, I thought this one was funny. I was glad that it had to do with Thanksgiving.
Me too.
So thanks so much for watching. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Nicole's channel. She's great. And you want to check me out too. I mostly read, I read kind of widely, but mostly I focus on romance. So this was fun, and tune in next month for Christmas read.
Yes. Thanks for joining us. And thank you, Laura.
All right. Bye.
Bye.